Alright, so here is the breaker box, circuit breaker box, circuit box, power box. Lots of names, same thing. So this is the new one, and of course, if you haven't seen this, I'm not sure how, but here's the inside. This is a new panel. You can, obviously I'm a little close to it. This is the only place I can mount the camera, but it will do for the purposes I need it to. And I apologize for the humming in the background. We're in a basement in Tennessee, and all basements here are wet, so you have to run dehumidifiers all the time down here. But I'm working on that. I'm trying to seal up the basement. You can see all the where the brick had problems before, and I've sealed it on this side, and then I'll dig it out on the other side, trench it out, and seal the exterior of it as well. You can also see this is a new board, and the old board came out to here. I'm going to actually have to extend this so I can staple all these lines to it per code. You can see this is what's remaining of my original wiring to the house, and that's the cloth wiring, and it's disintegrating. So I'm going to be chasing these wires to replace them. This one just happens to be GFI bathroom outlets, and they don't GFI because the ground is completely disintegrated. I'm sure it's hard to see, but this little green crap is the ground that's disintegrated, because the original power box here had a leak above it. Every time it rained really hard, water just dumped in through the foundation, and just literally poured water on the circuit breaker box. So that's been repaired, but there are some remnants of past issues. Now what I've got here is a few new wires as I'm rewiring everything, and if you do this kind of stuff, you have to keep pretty good track. If you're an electrician, you already know how to do all this stuff, and you've done it so many times, it's pretty easy to keep track of. For me, I just do a few at a time, and over time it's become more and more easy for me to keep track of it. So this line, as I follow it, tells me that it's I had one power line from upstairs that ran the outlets to my living room and to my first bedroom, and when the power box was replaced, it was about 2 feet too short to reach into the power box. So I had to rerun a whole new line to the first outlet, and basically just replace that. So that's what this is. Over here, I have the new wire for all of the new construction downstairs. Well, not all. It's split into two. So this is half of the outlets in the basement. The other half is over here, but it's not fully wired yet, so I'm not attaching that. And then I have a guest bedroom downstairs, as well as some secondary lighting. You can see I've got my light on the camera right now because the lights I have in the basement are small, and they don't light a lot on their own, and that was done specifically. But I have second lights that are actually more normal lights that will light up, and that is this line here, and that also runs a light and ceiling fan in the guest room down here. Now, one thing you'll notice is I've got two different colors of wire. That's denoting gauge of the wire. Yellow Romex is 12 gauge. White Romex is 14 gauge. What that means to you is the higher the number, the thinner the wire, and the less power it can run. So white or 14 gauge is commonly used for lighting, because light bulbs don't use a lot of energy and they don't draw a lot of amperage. Outlets use 12 gauge, which flows enough current to handle the quick draw of a vacuum cleaner or a blender or a toaster or those kind of items that go into outlets that require a lot more power. Here you see this piece. This is I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's what locks the wire into the power box, as you can see here. And it's just like a giant kind of nut and bolt, and it squeezes onto the wire where you need it, and then you take this nut off. You put this through the power box, and then you put this on the other side and you screw it on. And they're a real pain in the butt. Once they've been used once, they get kind of ragged. So I only reuse ones that are pretty clean. This one you can see has a little bit of rust on that screw right there, but this was a newer one that was in the previous power box. These are actually brand new, and these are 3/8 inch. They're the smallest ones. They're used for standard wire. Now, this, as you can see, is a bigger wire. This is 12/3. So the wire, the core of the wire is the same gauge as this one. But the difference is this has one single power line and a common line, as well as the ground inside. And those are right here. So you've got your power, your common, and the ground's in the middle wrapped up in paper. And then this is a 3-line. Red is for power, black is for power, white common, and the ground. This is used for higher powered items, 220 volt. So like ovens, stoves, that kind of thing. Now let's make it really clear. Playing with power boxes and your actual power is extremely dangerous. This is an area where if you do not know exactly what you're doing, and even if you do, it's still extremely dangerous, you want to contact an electrician. I did not install this box. This is outside of my scope. It's not really something I would want to do on my own. You can do it yourself if you pull the correct permits in your state or county, and you pay the fees. So I didn't want to do that. And then of course you have to have your power company come out and turn off your meter or pull your meter in order to disconnect the power, the main power to your house. This is the inside of a breaker box. Very dangerous. You can turn off the main power, which is right up here. It's just out of view. It's where this white stripe is right here. You can turn off the main power, and that will stop live feed in here. But then you're shutting off your refrigerators and your air conditioning, your heat, whatever. That shuts all of that down. Directly above that is 3 extremely large wires. And those are your main lines that come in from outside and connect to this. And they run serious power. One touch of those and you're going to be smoking. So these are very dangerous to play with. You don't want to play with these if you're not experienced. Generally speaking, this is again where the disclaimer comes in to call your electrician. Now you can see the breakers. These screws right here are live. That's where the electricity is. These black wires, as we've learned in other videos, is the power. Now here's one of the ones that I've explained before, where what they've done is, in order to run the hot water heater right here, they've used the common line as a power line. Instead of using a 3-wire system, they've actually just used a 2-wire system. And this one doesn't even have a ground, which is a big fat no-no. So this will be converted to a 3-wire, so it's running correctly. Now, you don't want to touch this area. This right here is the ground, or the common area. That is not electrified, and yet you still don't want to touch it in case at some point something were to cross over. And of course, if you're that close, you're getting too close to this part. And yes, the wire's kind of in the way. This part right here is electricity. That's where your circuit breaker's attached to. Now, With different gauge wire, as I said before, comes different circuit breakers. So the 12 gauge will run the 20 amp circuit breaker. Let me get that at an angle where it's not so shiny. So this is a 20 amp circuit breaker. So this is what I would call an outlet circuit breaker. And then your lights run on 15 amp circuit breakers. And this is what they look like. And there's your power screw right there. So they click into place, and we'll see that shortly. Now I need to get these wires in here, and I have to organize them the best that I can. I have a 40 breaker circuit box. It can handle 40 breakers. Now, I wanted that so I could do certain things at certain times. You certainly don't want to load all of this up unless you have better performance power coming in. So I have standard 200 amp power coming in, and again, we're getting in the weeds, but these are numbers that mean something. So I have 200 amp power coming in. That means that I can feed 200 amps at a time. So if I were to light all of these up and run something out of every outlet, I'm going to blow it. There's no way for it to handle that. But I intend to have certain circuit breakers specifically for Christmas lights and things like that, where I can just come down and manually flick the switch here instead of running around with power cords trying to plug everything in, and that will help me. So those only get used at certain times of the year, and then other breakers just don't feed power continuously depending on what they do. So if you're not basically plugging something into every single outlet you have all the time and running it all the time. So and again, with lights, kind of the same thing. Unless you're having a party, generally speaking, you're not going to be running your vacuum cleaner and your toasters and stuff when you're having a party. It's going to be mostly just lighting on. So in that case, your draw is down and you stay under the 200 amps. These ones in particular right here, like this circuit breaker right here, is not in use. It was in use and I've removed the wires, but I wanted to keep the hole plugged because the panel that goes over this has been removed. I don't want that exposed. So that's just sitting there temporarily until I decide to use it. And then this one here is an item I don't want to run for safety purposes. It's an old part of the house. It's an old electric ceiling heater. It got wired in, and I just want to make sure that it's not used until I can trace it and verify exactly what else may be connected to that switch, and then I will replace the heater with a fan. Okay, so I want to put power in the box. So I have to decide, where am I going to put this? Obviously these screws are hanging up. I'm not going to use this hole. I can use this hole here, and then I can come down here, and then that still allows me enough holes here, or I can use the back holes, which are a total nightmare to use. So what I will probably do is use this hole here, and that allows that if any water were to get on the power lines, it will have a bend in it that allows the drip to come off of the wire and get in there. But I have to verify that at this point it will reach what I need it to reach if there's enough wire. So fortunately I have a little play in my wiring, and I can decide whether or not that'll make it there, and it will. So I have to very carefully pop this out. And in order to do this work, you're going to again need some sort of, obviously wire strippers are good because you're going to need to strip these wires, and a screwdriver because you're going to need to be able to get in there. You want your screwdrivers to be insulated in some way, and you never touch the shaft while you're near the electricity. And you never want to have more than one thing in your hand at a time. If I'm playing with the strippers and I've got my screwdriver in my hand and I'm not paying attention while I'm doing some wire stripping, I could stick the screwdriver into the power. If my hands are in the wrong spot, I'm fried. So I've poked this out of the way, and I'm going to carefully remove it. You just bend back and forth until it clicks off. Now, I like to split my wires here before I put them through. It just saves me a little bit of pain in the butt while it's inside. I like to be as efficient as possible so I'm not playing inside the power box any more than I have to. From here, I don't want to open it or split it or pull the wires. I just want to get it ready so that it's easy when it gets to the other side. Then what I want to do is think ahead. I don't want to have my hands in here. So I'm going to take the wire and bend it this way so that when I put it in here, it comes out to me and then I can feed it through. Now I want to make sure that these screws here are pointing in a position where I can get to it. Whoops, I forgot to take the nut off. So we got to take that nut off of there. Okay, and then we'll do it again. We'll get that wire through, and that's going to stick into there. I'll put that nut back on. Now, again, you just have to be very, very careful, slow, methodical with all of your movements when you're near the power box. So I'm going to keep my hand away from there as much as I can. By doing that, I'm just going to use 2 fingers to get this on there. Now if I have to, I can tweak these by loosening this one in order to get all the screws to play fair. Okay, so now that we've got that in there and it's reasonably tight, we're going to take the screwdriver and we're going to put it on one of those little knobs that sticks out, and we're going to give it a little punch. And that's going to make it tight. And that's it. Now I've left this just loose enough that I can play with the wire until I get it where I need it to be, and make sure that I have the play that I want here. And again, here I want to have a backup. This is my primary. I want it to be in a position where any water comes down, it'll drip off of here. And then if for any reason it gets inside, I'm going to do a secondary on all of the wires to make sure that any drippage does the same thing. Okay, so now that we've gotten that one in, we're going to go ahead and strip it. And I will show you the easiest way to strip back wire. And again, you're going to want to try and stay away from the box as much as possible. So I'll do this left-handed. The sad part is I am left-handed. But I'm going to grab the ground. I'm going to give it a little twist like this to give it a little knob that's easier for this to hold on to. I'm going to grab onto it good and tight, and I'm going to pull. And that's going to open up my sheathing for me. Okay, so now that's opened up and I can peel it away. Now I have my wires. Now I'm going to take all of this and carefully cut that off. And now we have our wires in here. Okay, so the white wire and the ground are going to go to the common bar or the ground bar. And so for that you need to find 2 open screws, and I'm going to put them in this one right here. Now again, you don't want this to touch that because that is the electricity. So you want to be very careful while you do this. And again, do not touch the shaft of the screwdriver. You want to back these out. Don't back them out too far or they will fall out. And then you have the wonderful experience of jamming them back in. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep backing it out and then pushing it forward slightly to make sure that it's not coming out. This one's probably a little long. Okay, then I'm going to estimate the length that I need along with a dip. Okay, so I like that right there. Might be a little much, but I'm liking it. So I'm going to cut off what I don't need. Okay, now I'm going to strip this one. Now, I want this to be fairly straight and clean, but it still needs to have a dip in it. I just want it back further. Okay, now, insulated handles. Don't touch the metal. You're going to grab this. This is the only time you're going to have to use two tools at once. So I'm going to grab this one. I'm not going to let the cutting parts touch it. And I'm going to stick it in the screw. Now, because I have so many breakers still left available, generally you would put 2 and 2 and 2 and 2. But at this point, I'm getting a little tight down here. So I'm going to put it in this one. And you can see there's like this black plastic right here is a kind of a backer plate that stops the wire from going too far. So you push it up against that backer plate and you tighten that in there. Nice and tight. Okay, and what I do is I tighten it the best I can, and then I come back later after it's settled in for a little bit and I re-tighten it when I have a little more control with one hand. So now I've put the ground in. Okay, nice and tight, ready to go. Now here's the great part about the power line. This is outlets. So again, I'm going to estimate the length that I need. And here I'm already breaking my own rule. And get the tools out of my hand. So I want a little bit of a dip in there, and I want it to go right here. So I need to estimate approximately how much I need. I want to cut off about that much. And then I want to strip it. And there's that. Then I'm going to take my 20 amp breaker. I'm going to open the screw, which loosens the clamp. And before even putting it in there, I'm going to put the wire into the clamp and clamp it down. And this is much like outlets on my last video. It is pretty hard to over torque that. You want it in there darn good and tight. Okay, so now we've got the breaker wired. We want to make sure that it's in the off position. This is on, this is off. It's never been set before, so I'm going to go ahead and set it and make sure it's in the off position. Then, when you look at this, you can see on this particular, these are square D. On this particular one, this is the latch to hold it in place. So when you see the latch, that's the part that goes in first. Okay, so we're going to be very careful as to not light ourselves up. You're not going to touch the part with the screw, and you're not going to touch anything inside the box. You're going to get that latch in place, and you're going to give it a good healthy push. Now that is live, so you don't want to touch that. You're done. And I will not turn it on at this moment because I have more to do, but beyond that, because I want to be able to test each one as I do it. So I will not turn them on until I've got everything set back up so that I can turn each one on and go check the area that that was connected to verify that everything's working properly and that there's no shorts. Although, again, that should be picked up by this in general. I still want to go check. There's special tools that you can buy that test your outlets to tell you if they're wired correctly, if the grounds are hooked up correctly, and if everything's working right. So I won't turn this on until I'm ready to go check that specific one. And then when I connect these other ones, I will leave those off until I'm okay with this one. Then I'll go to the next one and I'll go test it again and verify that that one's okay. That is how you wire in a circuit breaker.